So it gets worse. MSNBC now has an ex-Fox guy who I actually bumped into in Iowa. Bit of a douchebag. This guy, Carl Cameron. And this is tweeted out by Ryan Grimm, by the way, the DC Bureau Chief, friend of the show, and DC Bureau Chief of the Intercept. So he caught this. This even caught his attention. He's retweeting a video from the Washington Free Beacon. They caught this. So watch what this guy says. So they're talking about, how horrible things are at Fox News. There's only, by the way, is it as if there's one cable station worse than another? That's just amazing to me. I'll tell you, one cable station actually tells the truth about Ukraine once in a while. Does that ever happen at MSNBC? No. Does it ever happen at CNN? No. So here we go.
Championed by Tucker Carlson. What happens at Fox News when something like this happens?
So I guess she's asking what happens at Fox News when there's a shooting that people are trying to blame their political enemy for, Tucker Carlson. That's the question. What happens at Fox News when something like this happens? Okay.
I can't even imagine. It's partly why I ended up getting out of there.
And it's partly why I've never had an original thought in my life. Okay.
It really is kind of horrible to think that journalists with national and international capacity are putting together this type of nonsense. I think the president did a great job. I wish he had.
This guy was the Fox News chief political correspondent. And now somehow he's a Boy Scout. Because he doesn't like Tucker Carlson. Bill O'Reilly you're okay with Bill O'Reilly? You're okay with Roger Ailes?
I think they are. I think they're just not okay with Tucker, and they're saying Fox to put pressure on Fox to take off Tucker.
That's right, because Tucker once in a while, because Tucker tells the truth about foreign policy, and they can't have that.
When Carl Cameron was at Fox, Bill O'Reilly almost explicitly incited for the murder of George.
Oh, tough. We had a tough.
Kansas.
So you froze for a second. Repeat that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when Carl Cameron was at Fox News, Bill O'Reilly explicitly incited, or almost explicitly incited, for the murder of George Tiller, who was the only women's health care provider who performed late-term abortions in Kansas. O'Reilly said he has hell to pay for this.
That's right.
And a few days later, George Tiller was shot in the back in his church as he prayed by an anti-abortion extremist. And that was just, before the Tucker era at Fox. And that was something, Carl Cameron didn't really seem to alarm him at the time. Yeah,
they used to call that guy Tiller the baby killer, and then someone killed that guy in church, right? Yeah. And Carl Cameron didn't have a problem with that. But no, Carl Cameron is he's a Boy Scout all of a sudden. The guy who was the biggest bullshit artist in the world, now he's good. He's with a Bush person from the Bush administration, a torturer, and they're going to talk about how bad someone else is. Okay.
And a lot of this a lot sooner, and we need a lot more from the left and the middle. And we got to watch out, because the Republicans have become the purveyors of misinformation.
Just in time for the midterms.
First, but I love how they say the Fox News host blames Democrats, blames shooting on Dems and on mental illness. Okay.
And when our two-party system is broken like that, democracy is seriously in trouble. The president acknowledged that. It's time to actually start doing things and maybe taking some names and putting people in jail.
He said maybe it's time to start taking some names and start putting people in jail. So they're talking about Tucker Carlson. You're talking about putting news people in jail? Over at Fox.
Have names, yeah.
That have names. And by the way, that seems crazy to me to say that. I mean, if you're going to blame, you want to pin this on the Dems, okay, but don't try to pin it on mental illness. The one thing we know had nothing to do with this.
Yeah, that guy was a completely rational individual.
Completely.
I mean, I obviously.
So who sounds like the radical there, Max? Who sounds like the extremist nut job? Is it Carl Cameron? Yes, that's who it sounds like, an extremist nut job. He wants to start taking names and putting people in jail for opinions. Go ahead, Max.
Well, this is the chatter. This is like the water cooler chatter at MSNBC. You know, we got to jail these people. This is what's being discussed. And now it sort of came out impromptu. But this is, I've been saying, and you know, in discussions also with other people in independent media, mostly people on the left who challenge U.S. foreign policy, that we are pretty much prepared for U.S. government to start trying to find ways, and its Western allies to start trying to find ways of actually legislating speech so that they can do what they did to Russian state-backed media, for example. Like Canada just banned RT completely. I think the UK has done it or is going to do it. But they're going to do it to independent sites just on the basis of their speech. And so this is kind of the same mentality. It's just people we don't like, we're going to find a justification and just do it. Because these people, the establishment, I mean, MSNBC to me isn't even left. It's just establishment. That's why they have all these ex-Bush officials there with Democrats, and they all are circling the wagons because they have lost credibility. They have lost the hearts and minds of normal American people, and they see Americans, they're frightened, and they see Americans as the enemy. They've seen the poll that shows over 50% of voters would support an independent candidate who is not Biden or Trump. They can feel the anger out there. They've seen the polls that show most Americans are concerned about inflation and rising food prices, and they're mad as hell, and they don't give a shit about Ukraine. And that frightens them. So they're going to start to legislate it.
And start locking people up who have dissenting opinions. Here's Occupy Democrats tweets this out. This is disappointing. Breaking: former Fox News reporter Carl Cameron says that former fucking chief political correspondent for Fox for years and years. Former Fox chief political correspondent Carl Cameron says that the Buffalo mass shooters ideology mirrors that of Tucker Carlson and Republicans spreading misinformation is so dangerous that it might be time to start putting people in jail. Retweet if you agree with Cameron. Whoa. So they want to just start putting people in jail for words that they don't like. Here's another one. Glenn Greenwald says, in the late 60s and 70s, the state of Mississippi tried to hold local NAACP leaders liable for the violent acts of their followers, claiming they incited the violence through their angry rhetoric. In 1982, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled in favor of the NAACP. That would violate the First Amendment now. Now, look at this. Now they want to lock people up. This is amazing.
By the way, that rhetoric, I saw the clip. By the way, I watched the clip of Tucker Carlson talking about that, the ideology that they're talking about. The Democrats have been saying this stuff
for years.
Gleefully,
well, I showed that.
Guess what? We're replacing you. You don't think that prompts people to be angrier than whatever the hell you think Tucker Carlson said?
We showed on another video that I dropped today that Bill Clinton had this rhetoric, Hillary Clinton. The Democrats talked like this up until about 5 minutes ago. Barack Obama deported more Hispanics than all the presidents combined since 1890. Do you know that? Do you know he built those cages? Do you know Barack Obama gassed immigrants at the border? You know Barack Obama bombed Muslim weddings? Do you know this stuff? No.
Yeah. I mean, I've covered the border since I began doing journalism 20 years ago. I was constantly going down to the border in southern Arizona. I saw the deaths start in the Bush era. I saw the Minutemen come down, the right-wing border vigilantes. I wrote profiles on them. And, Obama comes in and I continue going to the border, and it actually gets worse. And the Minutemen become kind of, as awful as they were, and they're infested with white nationalists, as they were just kind of like this side piece to what the state under Obama, with the full support of Obama and his DHS and ICE, was doing. And I was like, I've been writing about the right and this transmission belt to the Republican Party for years, but here are the Democrats
This is so
on the border, and the amount of militarization on the border. It just was out of control under Obama. So what was the ideological basis for that? Well, they never said what it was.
They never
But
said.
it was the same program that the Trump administration advanced in many ways.
But and we all know that the Democrats have preached replacement theory, but just in different words. And that the Hispanics are going to come here and take our jobs, and they're going to come here and take our resources. They're going to come and take our government services. That's what Bill Clinton used to say all the time, and Hillary Clinton. This is what the Democrats used to say. And Bernie Sanders, just a few years ago, said that open borders is a right-wing conspiracy. That's what the Koch brothers want to do, so they can flood us with cheap labor. That's exactly what Tucker Carlson says. That we have to go ahead.
Back in the 90s, when the border was more open and people would actually go, maybe some people would actually go to like junior college on the Texas side and come back home to Juarez or wherever their community was. There was a different situation, but a group of protesters in the San Diego area who were right-wing Republicans started a movement called Turn on the Lights, and they set up their cars along the border with their lights on all night and started creating this pressure campaign that went all the way to Washington when Bill Clinton was president. And what did Bill Clinton do? How did he respond to this right-wing anti-immigrant pressure movement? He initiated Operation Gatekeeper, which saw the government for the first time build militarized walls in San Diego to keep people from Tijuana out, and in El Paso to keep people from Juarez out. So it was a Democratic president that started to check off the boxes on the right wing's wish list. And there's just been a steady progression ever since then. It's just that the Democrats don't advance the ideological point of view that they're replacing white Americans. They don't really explain why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, I just remember when "lock her up" was a Trump catchphrase. Now MSNBC is advocating the same thing for its political opponents. And those are all, by the way, these are all those are 5 right-wingers. These are not left-wing people on MSNBC. This is a certified right-winger. So the FBI, 100%. This guy's former Fox News chief political guy. This is Donnie Deutsch, who said he'd vote for Trump over Bernie Sanders. And I don't know who the fuck that is. Those are 5 right-wingers. They maybe we should consider them all terrorists because they're right-wingers.
They don't represent anything except just authoritarian control, just establishment control. I don't think they're left or right. They're nothing. They're just hollow creatures of the establishment who don't care about anything in the Constitution.
They're like Brian Williams. They're an institutionalist.
Yeah.
I'm an institutionalist.
Here's what Black in the Empire said. You have just watched the former communications director for George Bush lead a panel talking about locking people up for misinformation. While our government tries to extradite Assange, which is the biggest threat to journalism in our time, they aren't talking about trying to free him. They are trying to jail somebody at their rival network. And if you want to start locking people up for misinformation, see, there it is. They hated it. Nicolle Wallace on Tuesday ripped her former National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, for once encouraging a lock her up chat about former secretary. So it's bad when it's someone you like, but if it's someone you don't like, lock them up. So they're all just like Trump. And that's what I've been saying since 2016. They all are Trump. They just hate that Trump doesn't hide it. And by the way, I don't care what we did. Nicolle Wallace's rant reveals what America's torture. She doesn't care about torture. They were torturers. She doesn't care. And if you want to lock somebody up for misinformation, Russiagate was one big evidence-free conspiracy theory. The dossier was funded and put together by the Hillary Clinton campaign. Hillary Clinton lied, and her campaign lied about that for a year straight. And then they had to pay a fine. And then it's all about the dossier. You ready? And remember they said the dossier was real? We all know it's all phony. It was all paid for by Hillary Clinton, which she lied about, and it's all made up. And let's listen.
It may be dirty, but it ain't fake.
Is there anything in the dossier that has been disproven?
No. I guess the short answer to the question.
Has anything been soundly disproven about the Steele dossier? And I would agree with Jim Clapper. I haven't seen anything.
Because a lot of these facts have not been disproven.
It's not been corroborated, but it hasn't been disproven either.
The dossier, in fact, is far from bogus.
The dossier is far from bogus. This portion of the dossier hasn't been publicly proven or definitively disproven. But obviously, were it proven true, it would pretty definitively establish extremely involved levels of collusion.
I'm still waiting for the innocent narrative to come out.
Some elements of the dossier have been verified, but none so far have been publicly disproven.
To date, none of it has been disproven, and whole big parts of it are holding up.
That's Nicolle Wallace herself right there. None of it has been disproven, and big parts of it are holding up.
The part that there was a dossier.
Yeah,
and the
that's
guy's
the part.
name was Michael Steele. Like the bit where he filled his name out. That part.
Holds up well. None of it has been disproven, as you said.
It's a fact that none of it, not one word, has been disproven. In fact, a lot of it turned out to be right on the money.
So there's many videos like that put together. I could do that all day. So should those people be put in prison? The FBI guy would want those people put in prison. Carl Cameron would want them people put in prison.
They're doing it. They're currently doing it. Julian Assange
That's right.
is in prison. And UK Home Secretary Priti Patel is going to decide on whether he's extradited to the United States. And Biden's Attorney General is seeking to prosecute Julian Assange for the crime of journalism.
So there you go, ladies.
Who's next?
Who's next? Who's next? Anybody who discovers a war crime, they will be next. And there's plenty of or any of us lying about. By the way, they do it right out in the open now. They steal, as Chris Hedges says, they lie, cheat, and steal right out in the open. They don't even try to. That $40 billion grift that they just gave to the military industrial, $40 billion. Do you know what $40 billion could do for you and your family?
You could buy Twitter.
You know what $40 billion could do for every take $1 billion for each 40 top cities in the country. Just give them $1 billion each and say, hey, put it on your do a jobs program. How about clean up your homeless problem? How about make affordable housing? There's a million things we could do with $40 billion in the United States. They did it right out in the open. Bam. They can't get you health care. They can't get you a living wage. They can't get you a $2,000 fucking check. But they just got $40 billion like that to give to their friends at the military industrial complex.
Yeah, but that would be taking Javelin missiles out of the hands of Ukrainian Nazis, Jimmy.
Yes.
That is cruel.
Yes.
You're a missile snatcher.
Okay, over to
You're
Steph.
taking missiles out of my kid's mouth.
My kid's name is Javelina. That's my daughter's name.
Hey, I'm on tour. Come see me in Irvine, California, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Salt Lake City, Washington. Washington? You mean Washington State?
Yes.
Yes. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all those tickets.